Okay, we're very proud of that intro. I hope you enjoyed it. And today's our guests are, I'm sorry, let me stop sharing. There we go. Today our guests are Grammar Table, the Grammar Table team, Ellen Jovin and Brandt Johnson. Uh, and tell you a little bit about them. They are both in business together in New York City, a communication skills training firm. And I don't know anything about that, so we'll get a chance to ask them about that. Ellen is a former freelance reporter, college writing instructor. She has created Grammar Table, as many of you know, which is a pop-up table where she just goes and lets people ask her random grammar questions. There's no jar on the table, so it's just a public service that she offers. And the person behind that, part of what they're doing is there's a book deal involved in this and a documentary series that they're working on. And Brandt Johnson, who's the partner in the business, um, is filming and recording these interactions so far all over the country except for 3 states. We'll ask them what their problem is with those 3 states. And Brandt himself is a director, writer, producer, and he does a comedic web series called Brad Advice about a well-intentioned but bad communication skills consultant. So maybe we'll get a chance to see what that looks like. So we'll get to know them over the next hour, and if you have questions, please feel free, as Heather said, to mark those questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to them. So welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Grammar Table.
Thank you for having us, Mark.
I've lost my sound.
Can you hear us?
There's always a technical problem, right? No, my sound is. Say something again.
How about now?
Can you all hear us?
Is it just me, or is it
just me?
It's
just you, Mark.
Sorry, just you. Always something. Usually it's the intro that doesn't work out. I've got these fancy headphones on, so I should be able to hear everything. All right. Sorry. So, Ellen and Brandt, how are you managing there in New York City in these interesting times? You can't take your table out.
Will you be able to hear us if we tell you?
Yeah, I've got it now.
Okay.
I heard that. Yeah.
All right. It's not the most wonderful time ever in New York. Lots of sirens, but it's been getting better in recent days.
And are you feeling cooped up? And have you been able to get out? Do any wandering around? Not with the table, I assume.
Not with the table, but we do get out from time to time. Every couple of days, go for a run in Central Park, and walking through the streets has been a little surreal. You can walk down the middle of the street and
not be run over.
It becomes a pedestrian walkway. So
right.
It's a little strange, but it seems as though people are taking social distancing seriously.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good news. And so you've done. So you took the grammar table out. You did it in New York City, and then you decided. And I'm going to ask you why in a minute, but you decided, hey, let's do this all over the country. And you have not done Alaska and Hawaii, which is sort of understandable. People leave those till the end, but you haven't done Connecticut. Is that right?
There was pizza. There was a pizza situation there that interfered with our setting up.
We actually did go, and we're about to set up.
But we were hungry, so then we went to get pizza. And by the time we ate enough pizza for us not to be hungry anymore, it was too dark. So we decided to postpone until spring, but then something happened.
Yeah, we're planning to be in Alaska and Hawaii around now too.
Right, we're supposed to be.
Oh, were you really?
Put a little on the grammar table schedule.
Wow, you had the trip planned out. So then 50 states, and from that you have a book coming out in 2021.
In late 2021, that's the plan. With Houghton Mifflin Harcourt about the adventures of Grammar Table across either 50 states or 47.
Yeah. I
Maybe
have.
it'll be 47 real live states and 3 virtual
Right.
states.
Oh, that's
Right.
true. You could zoom to Connecticut. Yeah,
You can zoom into Alaska.
people would understand. Well, Alaska makes sense, but so I have here. I'll add these. I like to pull books off my bookshelf. I've got Writing for Business by Ellen, and there it is, and Essential Grammar for Business. And then the great thing about this is that this book by Brandt, which is part of the series, they go together in alphabetical order. So as long as I don't get anybody like between Johnson and Jovin in on my bookshelf, you guys will be together now.
We're
So-
next to each other when we go to vote, too,
Yeah.
which is very convenient.
Yeah, so none
Oh,
of
yeah?
you on this call, if your name is J-O something in between H and B, get away.
Yeah, she's just kidding.
I am.
So tell us the story. What was the motivation for Grammar Table?
I love grammar, and I have been for years either teaching it or when social media happened, I started posting questions and comments about it all the time. And at some point I just got a little grumpy about being on the computer.
I can attest to that.
Yeah,
so
grumpiness, yeah.
I thought it would be nice to go someplace that wasn't a computer and just set up on the street. Brandt had already been roaming around town with his web series, and he often, for his web series Brad Advice, would go film people actually in Verdi Square. You went,
Yep.
which is the same place I ended up setting up.
Oh,
And so he would interview people on the street, and so there was that precedent. And then there was also a bookseller I started to see on the street, just setting up and selling books in front of the local grocery store. And so I thought one day that it just might be nice to set up a grammar stand. And actually the main barrier in my mind, the only barrier, was just that I was worried about whether I'd be allowed to,
Right.
because there's
Which
not
seems
that
to be-
much space in New York, and I wasn't really sure
Yeah.
what was involved. And so that I think that delayed the realization of the idea for a few months, maybe, while I sort of mulled that over and what it would entail and all that stuff. And then one day I just did it.
and you've been kicked out of a few places.
I have been kicked out of a few places. That's true.
Yeah.
I was expelled. Well, no.
We were expelled in Memphis.
Oh, we were. We were at a
Memphis.
shopping mall in Memphis, and we were expelled. In fact, we
Yeah.
were across the street from a shopping mall, and we were still expelled, which I found a little bit too strict.
A very large gentleman stood and watched as we packed up.
Yes.
Oh boy,
It's exciting.
Yeah, but like I say, you don't have a tip jar or anything out there. You're just
I think
offering
that's an
something
important
free.
point. Yes,
Yeah.
that's an important point. Now, in Chicago, in Millennium Park, a security guard rolled over to me on a Segway. Is that what they're
Mhm.
called?
I think that's right.
Segway, one of those big rolling things?
Yeah.
So he was a security guard on a Segway, and he was preparing to kick me out. But the nice man who was talking to me was very strategic, and he engaged him in our current ongoing grammar discussion, which was about the plural of what the plural of mongoose is. And the guy got totally distracted and let me stay. And he rolled away.
That's
So
excellent.
usually we don't get kicked out. It's not,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like a very pernicious activity, I think.
We got kicked out in Buffalo also.
Oh, we did, by a bank,
Yeah.
A bank.
a big bank.
You're like in front of the bank, and
Yes.
Grammar Table was not welcome at M&T Bank in Buffalo.
Oh. Said the
I
name.
mean, no, in some random bank in Buffalo.
yeah, some random bank
recall.
in Buffalo. Heather will put up the link to that bank, so if you do bank there, you can, or maybe the competitors, you can go somewhere. else.
M&T hates grammar. It's
No,
hashtag-
stop, stop that. Don't do
Yeah.
that.
That's good.
Oh
I
my
really
God.
I thought it was great when you both demonstrated the segue. Can you do that again? How do you?
I think it's, is this
Yeah,
the segue?
Yeah, that's it. This, well, okay, excellent. So how did the book come about? How did the video series come about? Was that something you kind of talked about? Did you think about initially? Hey, this would be fun to like do this, to record this.
It sort of evolved, and I was in the periphery of things as Ellen was doing her grammar table, often in Verdi Square, which is right outside of where we live. I would sit off to the side and do whatever I would do just to sort of take in the scene. And it was really so relaxing and beautiful and inspiring, all these interactions that Ellen was having with every stripe of person you can imagine. And so I personally felt utterly engaged and mesmerized by the whole activity from the very start. So that was sort of the context of my frame of mind and relationship to it very early on.
He's legally obligated to be mesmerized by me, though.
Yeah. Well, right. Sure. Yeah. And your interactions with various people.
No, but actually, while Brandt was hanging out with me, which was so much fun, it would just be like a warm evening. He'd be out there, he'd bring his computer, he'd do work. People would come up and ask grammar questions. Sometimes he'd participate. And at some point around the time that he started thinking it'd be cool to record these things, I was thinking, I wonder if I can ask Brandt to start recording some of these things, because it's a very visual experience.
Sure. Yeah. So what was it like? What was the first question? Do you remember the first person?
I only remember the second question.
Okay.
I've forgotten the first question. It might be buried in there somewhere, but the second question came from the same guy that asked the first question. He asked three questions. And the second.
Well, let's get to the third. No, I'm kidding. What was the second question?
He asked three questions, and the second one was, how many words do you think Donald Trump knows?
Oh, and your answer was?
It was something along the lines of maybe not that many, but I think the question was prompted by on my sign. I have I put all kinds of suggestions about ideas for what people can talk about. I have my sign here, but I don't think should I hold it up?
Sure.
Okay, I'll hold it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to block our faces for a second.
Oh, look at that.
I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Here's the sign.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can actually see the part where it says best words, but I put on there just when I defined it. I drew this on my iPad, and I added the best words because I figured that would be a good way, to advertise the grammar table while poking a little fun, and it was fun.
So very subtly.
Yes, I think it is very subtle because a lot of people don't actually get it, but I get it, and that makes me happy.
One thing I was concerned about as we were talking about starting to video this and maybe have a documentary project, it seemed as though so much of what was wonderful about it was how vulnerable people were and open to asking about things they didn't know, open to having Ellen engage with them in what really seemed just like a wonderfully meaningful way. I felt as though putting a camera on people as they come up to the table might just destroy it. And that, I actually felt, I mourned the lack of any of the video stuff as we started, because there was just something pure about just a conversation among people at the table.
Yeah. But
I feel as though it inevitably had an effect on what went on, but it didn't destroy anything. In fact, it invited people that might not have approached otherwise. They noticed something is going on, and so it turned out it all worked out very well.
Right,
just one person at the table.
The camera does attract a few people who are hams.
That might be a good time. We have had a couple of questions pop over in the chat.
Okay.
The first one actually was, Ellen, where did you get your shirt?
I made it.
Really?
Yes, and I believe this is for sale now.
It is.
Brandt has organized this part. Brandt basically is really good at practical things, not so good at them. So he's organized that. And
this is Ellen's design. It's
it's the
sentence diagram of I
really truly love grammar.
Grammartable.com.
Yeah, grammartable.com.
Oh yeah, tell me about your books. These are all English as a second language, or
Nope, these are all language. Well, there are a few English as a foreign language books here, but these are all for. You can't see the full bookshelf, for language study of other languages. So I have them alphabetized from Albanian on the upper left,
Yeah.
and it goes across for multiple shelves to the bottom right, which is Zulu. So Albanian to Zulu.
So, so these aren't in English. These are in the native
A
languages.
lot of them are instruction books that are presented in English. So, you know, using English explanations to learn Zulu, but they actually appear in multiple languages. For example, I have a book on Persian that is written in Italian. I have a book on French that's written in German. You know,
wow.
then you can study 2 languages at once.
Yeah, yeah. So you are you speak a few languages, or do you just have an interest in?
I've studied somewhere between 25 and 28. I majored in German in college. I love just language study. As I'm sure all of you know, language skills erode when you're not using them. Perhaps you're familiar with that.
I try to use them. Yeah.
I'm just barely hanging on to English. No, but I was simultaneously, I would say, fluent in 6 at one point, and I knew quite a bit about a whole bunch of others. But at the moment, I would need a refresher time to feel totally comfortable.
Well, sure, but although as I understand it, it does come back to, like, if you were to suddenly start speaking it, the things would click and you would pick things up.
Yes, and actually I love that. It kind of reassures one that the brain is still capable of some things.
The reason I said that, I'm thinking of my cousin who teaches English in Australia and in China, and she lived for a number of years in Iran before the revolution, and she was there, went back many years later, and didn't think she knew a word of the language, couldn't remember any of the language until she got in a cab, and the cab driver was racing across town like a maniac, and so she started yelling at him. Took him completely by surprise that this British-born woman from Australia would be suddenly speaking to him in his native language, telling him to knock it off and slow down. So
that's
anyway.
actually a very beautiful story, and I think for me and for many people, there's a whole lot of emotion tied up in one's relationship, not just to one's own language, but to other languages. For example, when I was going to my 25th college reunion, I was in the middle of refreshing my French skills, which I had studied in school and gotten to a pretty high level. And so for the first time in 25 years, I was again studying French, and I had it on the train, on Amtrak, on the way to my college reunion. And it was fun, not just because I love nerding out about, you know, verb conjugations and subjunctive, but also because it really brought me back to that time. It was like a full emotional and intellectual immersion in this moment from my past. And I think for a lot of people who are adults and think they can't acquire a new language or relearn what they knew, that they would be very surprised by what happened if they just picked something up. We don't lose it all.
Excellent. And Heather, you said there were a couple of questions. I think I let one in and then immediately started talking again.
So one segued really well into that. If Jay Sanchez wants to unmute and ask, otherwise I can ask on your behalf. Yes, there we go.
Yes, this is Jesus. I wanted to know if your knowledge of English is useful to learn other languages.
Yes, because you can find language study books written in English for a whole bunch of languages. It's actually harder I think that's the main reason, because any language that I spoke fluently would be helpful. But I know from experience that if you try to buy language books for less studied languages, you know, like if I wanted to find a book on, I'm thinking like on Irish, written in Arabic, that'd be really hard for me to do. So English is often, there are a few languages where you can find tons of published materials to acquire other languages. And those would be, I guess, French, German, English. I haven't had as much luck in Spanish that I can remember, but I'm sure there are quite a few. And also, I sometimes have more trouble when I try to find books in Portuguese to study other languages. So English is helpful because so many
I have the same trouble finding Portuguese reference materials. I'm sorry,
I feel like
I don't
you might be
speak
making fun of
Portuguese.
me. Okay.
No, I'm not. I'm very impressed. That's the point. I'm so very impressed because I speak only English, and even that, I just make up as I go. So, I'm impressed with both of you. I'm impressed with something that we should mention is that you mentioned the other day that Ellen, you're not really this tall.
I'm not. I'm actually on a booster seat so that we can line up reasonably well in the same picture. Otherwise, I'd be or Brandt would go off the top. You would see the bottom. You'd see his smile.
Yeah. So you're and you used to play professional basketball professionally. You're kind of a Renaissance man with all your what was your major? Math? Was it in
I was a math
college?
major.
And you were in finance, and you played basketball professionally, and you're an actor, and so tell us about the basketball level.
It has
we
been
don't talk about sports enough on this show.
Yeah, the basketball I played in college and decided after some years in finance that I wanted to give it another go before I hung up my sneaks forever, and got some tryouts and some offers in Europe and played there for a couple of years. Also played against the Harlem Globetrotters on tour all over Europe. I was in a stadium in the middle of Europe somewhere. I can't remember exactly where at the moment, but standing at the free throw line and about to shoot, and a Globetrotter came up behind me and pulled down my shorts. And I continued, shot, made the shot, the crowd went wild. So that was a great moment for me.
Did you know this was happening?
No.
Or was this a spontaneous? I mean, we've seen it done, but probably at the point you're just thinking about the basket.
Right. It was a complete surprise, but it turned out pretty well. We also played outdoors in a soccer stadium in a torrential downpour. Kept playing. The crowd put up their umbrellas, and there was an inch or so of water on the court, and we would get a sliding start, and I did a belly flop from the top of the key, slid right off the end of the course. That was also an unusual basketball experience.
That's terrific. And then tell us about briefly about the web series that you've done.
Yes, Brad Advice. It is about a communication skills consultant named Brad Johnson. No relation to Brandt Johnson, the communication skills consultant.
Funny coincidence, though. Yeah.
Yeah. He has a lot of advice to give, and it's really bad. So Brad Advice.
So can you give us an example of what would be bad advice?
Well, he goes up to people on the streets often and strikes up conversations. He had a rule of thumb that you should always look at someone's left earlobe when speaking to them, because that activates the opposite hemispheric effect that gives people a sense that you're really connected with them. So not in the eye, but to the earlobe, for example, was one of his rules of thumb.
Okay, and just a disclaimer, everybody who's watching, that was bad advice. That was not something you want to do.
Not to be confused with Brad,
Yeah. So the question I was going to start with, I'm half an hour late with the question I was going to start with, but this was our assistant producer, Erin Brenner, suggested this beforehand in a Slack chat. She said, Ellen, both of you, why would you put yourself in a situation where people could cuss you out when you take away their precious grammar peeves?
It is really risky, but I steeled myself for the dangers involved. I mean, we do encounter some pretty grumpy people. I remember one woman, what was it? it's so hard to remember amid all the peeves. But you know, she approached me in the subway station at 72nd Street. I was actually inside the subway station, so you know, we're having to scream at each other basically because the trains are going by a floor below a bit. But the part of what made this so much fun for me is the range of people that we meet that all feel connected in some way to that word, whatever it means to them. Because I think a lot of people on this call, I know we have a lot of editors here, are familiar with the shifting definitions of grammar, you know, as used in linguistics, as used by the layperson. You know, what does it mean exactly? Well, to people walking by, it seems to mean anything connected to language, and language is something we all as human beings have in common. That guy at the beginning of that clip was so sweet to us. You know, he just was so flummoxed that there was a table for grammar, even though we didn't talk about grammar. It seemed like it affected him in some way, and that affected me in some way, and then that just makes it addictive, and I want to go out and do more, which is why I'm so irritated by this pandemic, because it's preventing me from doing that. And here we are back on computers again.
Full circle.
But it's
Hopefully
delightful.
we'll get there.
One thing from my perspective as an observer of Ellen interacting with so many different people, that it's just so moving to me, is that from the very experienced word person, editors, writers, lawyers, people with really sophisticated, nuanced thoughts that they want to share with Ellen, down to people who are far less sophisticated with language or less familiar with words and how to use them. Often they are homeless or facing other challenges in their lives. Ellen's openness and willingness to really engage with them, I see the response in people, and it's remarkable and beautiful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's great. Yeah. We have some other questions in the wings. So before we use up all our time, I'll try to stop asking questions myself a little bit. We'll maybe get some audience questions. What would people like to know about grammar table?
We have one from Sarah about Louisiana. Sarah, if you want to unmute and ask.
Okay. I think what I wrote was, were there any French-influenced grammar idiosyncrasies? I don't know if you went to New Orleans, or I'm just curious. It seems like they have the most distinctive language in our whole country to me.
I don't recall anything of that in New Orleans, actually. We were there. In fact, we stayed there multiple days because, yeah, but we didn't encounter that so much. One thing that impressed me as we went everywhere, because we went from small towns to big cities, is Americans really travel a lot. There is a lot of moving. So we were finding people in New Orleans who were from there, but I didn't necessarily notice a heavy influence in that regard. We also met a lot of people who were there from other places because it attracts so many tourists. So no, I would say the places that we saw the most regional influences were probably Decatur, which you saw in the first clip, and then maybe also maybe Mississippi as well.
And the thing I noticed in New Orleans, perhaps more than any particular grammar things going on, was the spirit of the people there. There really was a noticeable sense of people's enjoying the moment. And that was really interesting. There's sometimes that is not noticeable in New York City as people are moving quickly from place to place. And there was an ease about the feeling in that city that was really nice.
It was hedonism, which I can relate to. I consider myself a language hedonist.
A language hedonist.
Yes.
I'm gonna write that down. So what?
Well, never mind.
What would you describe for me a language hedonist? What does that mean?
I feel very tapped into what it is that I enjoy about language. So, let me give you an example from language study. You know, the problem that people have sometimes when they get sick of studying a language, I think often that is a failure of appreciating what it is that makes it fun for you. So for example, if I'm studying a language and I'm not having fun, I'm getting grumpy because whatever I'm working on is not clear to me or something like that, I can shift gears. Like I might switch from vocabulary to an audio lesson, or an audio lesson to a writing lesson. I just go, I move swiftly from one thing to the next. So there's a sense of play for me with language that I'm able for myself to recreate constantly so that my enthusiasm doesn't wane. And that's been helpful for me, both in acquiring language skills, but I think also in teaching to help people tap into their own language pleasure, because if you're not enjoying something, you're not going to keep working on it.
And you also pair other activities with language learning. Also, I've watched Ellen hula hoop while learning a language in audio lessons. So
I did an entire Hindi, half-hour Hindi audio lesson while hula hooping in our living room.
and that hula hoop had those little like magnetic bumps on the inside of it, so it was like really hardcore.
It was a very heavy hula hoop.
This was not just you're any kind of hula hoop.
No.
That's impressive. Is there a video of this?
There is.
There is.
Post it to the website.
Okay.
If you'd like to, yeah.
That's a good
We
idea.
should do that.
That will be good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I have made a note.
Hula hooping video to come.
All right.
Don't try this at home.
No, I certainly wouldn't.
Or
Try-
do.
No,
Okay,
try it at home.
All right.
I'll do it.
Pick two. Try this at home.
I can do a 20-second hula hoop while learning another language.
Post that video.
The thing is, so, I mean, obviously language is, I mean, the thing I get out of it is that everybody has a relationship with it. And that sounds like a very obvious thing to state, but everybody really does have strong feelings about the language, the heritage, how they say things, the words they learn growing up, all this. You have a different perspective as a multilingualist in that you also are, the grammar, the pure grammar part of it. You are a multi-grammarian. You understand how grammar works, which is something that we know innately and we understand and we use, but you actually have to like critically look at all the different languages and keep track of which one does it this way, which one does it that way. And there should be a question here at the end, and I'm not sure what it is, but
and I have something to say. Even without a question, I have something to say.
Good.
Yes, although it's interesting, the experience of someone who studies language compulsively, if I may put it that way, and someone who approaches it from the perspective from a linguistic perspective, actual linguists, it's quite different. I really just have I have a much more hands-on exposure than a theoretical exposure. If we're talking about language structure and, like I've studied languages that have a subject, object, verb order, or even something more unusual, as opposed to English, which sticks to subject, verb, object. But I haven't studied that formally in the sense that some other people have. So I feel as though I'm very much in the sticks and muds. Wait, let me try this again. See, the problem is you start to lose the English after a while. The sticks and mud of language and language acquisition that I have kind of a goofball level appreciation of how it works. And I see some new structure and I think, wow, that's just crazy. And then then I see a new one in another language. So that part of it is just really, I think it has made me less parochial about my understanding of English.
Sure. And I should mention before I forget that you're also doing a Zoom thing. You're doing the diagramming sentence instructions as a Zoom series.
I'm done with that now. I just have to make one more video and post the third one. But I did a 3-part sentence diagramming series. In the spirit of what you see on my shirt, this is the Reed and Kellogg were 2 actual guys from quite a while ago, some generations back. And their system, in one form or another, was taught for quite a number of years in American schools. I don't know if it was ever universal, but it was pretty widespread. And so I believe both my grandparents and my mom, at least, I think, had exposure to it. I hope I'm not misspeaking there. And it just, is a way to show schematically how sentences were put together. I loved it, and I think that it is central in why I'm such a grammar addict today. I mean, I did it for a full year in 8th grade. I just reunited last spring with my 8th grade sentence diagram teacher in Los Angeles from 1978 to 1979. I loved her class so much. I mean, I just could not wait to do my homework and go over them in class. And I would get so hopped up and really want to, like, you know, say the answer to every single thing. So it's not, I did it for fun. I went back and did these sessions for fun after the pandemic came upon us, because like a number of activities people have taken up. I mean, I've seen people knit, I've seen people sew, I've seen there's a group for people who are birding from their backyard because they can't go out. This is my mode of relaxing during a pandemic. So it's, you know, grammar therapy for the stressed out, homebound language lover.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, more questions. Heather, I'm sure we have some built up now that
We have a couple. We have one from Jasmine. Jasmine, if you want to find and unmute yourself.
Hi, Ellen. I just want you to know that, again, I've brought a whole class from Touro College. Because Ellen actually came to one of my classes, and she took questions from my TESOL teacher candidates at Touro College last year, and she explained grammar, and she had her whole table with that sign set up in the classroom. And I think we were almost crushed with people, right, Ellen?
It was pretty full. Thank you for giving me an audience.
No, when people heard that there was somebody who actually understood grammar, like everyone wanted to come into that classroom. So you talked about sentence diagramming, and I actually have, you know, Amanda, Paige, and Antonia, and a whole bunch of my students in there, and we touched on sentence diagramming. Now the question here would be, would you recommend sentence diagramming for English language learners? And if there was one grammar point you would start first with for English language learners, which one would that be?
Oh my gosh. Okay, first of all, that last question is completely impossible. So I'm not even going to try, because that's like asking me, you know, my favorite book or my favorite kind of ice cream. I just can't do that. Especially not the ice cream. So I don't know. As for your question about recommending it, I recommend anything that makes people enjoy learning. And what I found when I was in junior high, I remember that there were kids who loved sentence diagramming. And for them, I think it was a wonderful vehicle to bring them closer to language, to create an intimate relationship with it, which I think everything I can remember about studying language, like learning to, you know, doing spelling lists, practicing my cursive, anything that really made me want to do more of it, that's useful. But what makes me concerned about sentence diagramming, there are probably two things. One is that so many kids seem to hate it. Actually, so many kids seem to hate it. Secondarily, there are a couple of ways where it falls down. I think I'm not fully intimate with them because I don't know that we went to the, you know, the outer boundaries of where grammar can take you, but sometimes sentence diagramming was taught in a way that's a little reductive for how language actually works. So there's some, you know, the influence of linguistics has made me a little bit more hesitant about endorsing it. And the last thing, I think it's incredibly hard for teachers to grade. It's such a pain because you have all this stuff pointing all over the place. So, well, maybe some teachers have different thoughts about that, but that's what I wouldn't want to grade it. I just believe in an array of strategies that can connect people to the pleasure of it, because it's just like working out. If you hate running, you're not going to run. You got to figure out what thing, you know, if you need to do that rope suspension yoga from the ceiling, or the you know, those threads that suspend. Silks. Yes, that sounds a lot more appropriate. Yes, like, you know, you have to figure out the thing that you like. That's what I'm good at. That is my special skill. Also, I can really remember anyone that I met before age 21. I remember all the faces and names, but those are my two skills.
Well, that's my next question. Where did you go to junior high school that everybody loved the sentence diagramming?
No, not everyone did. Some of the kids hated it. In fact, in fact, if I post a diagram on my Facebook page, they pop up and say, I hated this. Again, like this I'm the source of traumatic memories, but I went to this all-girls school in LA that's no longer an all-girls school, 7th grade through 12th grade. And 8th grade was seriously dedicated to the art of sentence diagrams.
Excellent. More questions?
We have one from Madeline.
Okay.
Did I pronounce that right? Oh, perfect. Go ahead, unmute.
Hi, I am an editor of almost 10 years, but I never learned how to diagram a sentence in school, and I never really learned a lot about the specific terminology for, parts of speech and tenses and stuff. Most of that I picked up from other language learning, and I'm wondering how you feel those things, especially sentence stamp diagramming, has helped you in your career, and whether that's something you would recommend for someone who's already established as an editor.
I think it depends a lot on the person. Some people really connect to that way of thinking about language. Some people are much more intuitive. I've read things by writers who have talked about how they just know instinctively how the grammar works. They don't know what anything is called. I mean, I think a lot of them probably had some exposure, as most of us do in school, maybe not as intensively as they would like, or maybe it doesn't stick in their memories. But I don't mean to hammer this idea too much, but I think it is a lot about pleasure. So for me, having a technical understanding of how a sentence is put together feels really important to my appreciation of the language. So, a lot of times people will come to me and say, I feel something's off with the sentence, what's wrong with it? And I can tell. I mean, I think I can I feel very confident in my ability to diagnose it and fix it. And some of those grammatical elements affect writing quality too. I mean, for example, in business writing, because I work with a lot of business people about how to communicate more effectively, a lot of the, I see a lot of sentences where people heap up 6 prepositional phrases in a row that might be slightly hyperbolic, but not by that much, before they ever get to the verb. So they have this endless subject with all the prepositional phrases in there because they have this belief that having fewer sentences is better, no matter how long the individual sentences are. Somehow that feels more economical to them. So I feel that this knowledge helps me diagnose and fix sentences quickly, but there are plenty of writers who never think about it that way at all and who do very well. I think they tend to be people who read very heavily and connect in a very profound way to language in a way that not everyone is able to do. And I think sometimes for those people, it does help to do this. So I think it's a personal choice. But if you want to be, if you want to talk about that more, I'm happy to talk about it with you privately, because as you may have gathered by now, I like talking about grammar.
A little bit, yeah. On this trip, I know you went through Ohio and you didn't come to my town, even though I invited you to come to Bexley. You just chose the northern route. You went up to Cleveland. Did you do the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame outside there, or where were you in?
We actually went to Toledo.
Yeah, this is.
Oh, you didn't do Cleveland.
This was a weather-based decision. As we were approaching Ohio, a lot of the planning of this trip, first of all, it's very last minute and it is heavily, heavily weather dependent. So I checked weather.com about 50 times a day whenever we were going across the country. And when we were getting near Ohio, every place in Ohio was rainy in the north, and we needed to stay in the north to be on track for our next destination, I think. So I checked the weather for all of northern Ohio. I really wanted to go to Cleveland, where I've been many times. I often do work there, teaching writing at the bank there.
Not M&T Bank.
Not M&T. No, and but I checked.
What bank was it? Was it a good one?
Every single place was raining, and the only place where the weather forecast was reasonably good was Toledo.
And
what?
And a side benefit to good weather in Toledo is the Mud Hens game was not rained out. So we set up outside of the Toledo Mud Hens minor league baseball team game that was going on.
Yes, we planted ourselves right next to the line, which wound around. It was this long line of baseball fans. And so as they passed, they would ask grammar and language questions.
How many people
and grammar.
Baseball, yeah. Do you have a sense of how many people you've spoken with? How many questions you've answered?
I don't, although I was thinking about that the other day for some reason. I mean, it's
a lot.
I think it has to be thousands of people, because if you think just in New York, before we ever even went on the road, we're right by an express subway stop. That means when a train arrives, hundreds of people come out and they have to go by me. I ambush them.
You don't actually say, hey, I mean, you're not like a huckster who says, come on over and give me a question. They come to you because they say,
I don't. A couple of reporters have tried to railroad me into doing that because they wanted to hurry up and get the footage. And I indulged a couple of them a couple of times. And then I was like, no, I don't like this, because that's all you need is to scare more people about grammar.
Alan's the anti-huckster.
Thank you.
So are there like long pauses? Are there lonely times where you're just sitting there and nobody's like, people are ignoring you as they walk by?
Some of the greatest footage is a wide shot of Ellen alone in some expanse, or not alone, but people ignoring her passing by. I think those are brilliant. So yes, lots of that time.
I personally do not enjoy that as much, and I sometimes have an emotional blow right after I first set up because I'm freaking out.
Right, and it's often the case. There are long periods of time where people don't stop by, and Ellen starts to feel as though, oh, nobody cares, and I feel this, I feel silly, or this is not working. And then moments later, somebody will show up and she'll turn to me after the person left and said, oh my God, that was amazing. So it's
yeah. I mean, we did go to towns that had 1,000 people in them. You just don't get the same foot traffic there.
We went to Red Cloud.
Yeah, that was good.
Minnesota?
No, it's this is Red Cloud, Nebraska.
I was going to say Red Cloud, Nebraska as I announced that, but then I thought, should I not say that because it's not real? I think it's Red Cloud, Nebraska.
Yeah, so it's the home of Willa Cather, and they have the Willa Cather.
Right.
I forget the formal name of the organization, but we set that on the one tiny main street there.
We drove there from Steamboat Springs.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
So yeah, I think that was Nebraska.
Yeah.
We can check on that.
Yeah, I think we're almost out of time, and I learned that I was entirely muted for the great intros. You saw me you may have seen me dancing. No, I was sharing screen. My video was off. No, I did turn my video on. So you probably saw me doing this, and there was no.
No, we didn't actually see you doing that. We saw.
You don't have to. Yeah,
and it was like but it was a silent but dramatic presentation of names.
Yeah. Well, we're going to correct it at the end because we pay thousands of dollars for the sound, and so we want to. We gotta, and we'll go out with that. And it's about time. Do we have any more questions, or are we good? You know what? I would love to have you back because I do have more questions. And like when you finish your 50 states, maybe come back and tell us about the last 3. Tell us how you were received in Connecticut, especially.
If you could hasten the pandemic, that we'll get right on that.
Yeah.
Hasten the end of the pandemic.
The end of it.
Yes. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. All right. I think we're done. That was terrific. Thank you both. Here we go. Thank you very much. And you hear it, right? That's the right one. Okay, and now, in case that's not enough, one more. And you don't have to hang around for it. I understand if you're